Hi and welcome back. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of one of the darkest corners of the internet, the Darknet, a place where cryptocurrency became both a revolution and a weapon. The Darknet promised freedom from surveillance, anonymity from authorities, and the ability to exchange goods and services beyond their reach of governments. But it also became the perfect breeding ground for scams, fraud, and deception. Billions of dollars have flowed through these hidden marketplaces. And for every user who thought they were striking a clever deal, many more watched their money vanish into thin air. This is the story of how Darknet fraud and crypto scams turned millions into smoke, and why, in this hidden world, trust is often the most dangerous illusion of all. Part 1. The Rise of the Darknet and AMP. Crypto 2. Understand how fraud flourished, we need to look back at how the Darknet evolved. The Darknet is not just a place. It's a network of hidden websites accessed through tools like Tor, designed to mask identities and locations. These websites don't show up on Google, and they require specific links and encryption to access. By the early 2010s, it became the home of Silk Road, the infamous marketplace founded by Ross Ulbricht, known by the alias Dread Pirate Roberts. Silk Road changed everything. It allowed users to buy drugs, counterfeit goods, and even hacking services using Bitcoin, the first widely adopted cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was the perfect fit. It was decentralized. It offered pseudonymous transactions. It seemed untraceable at the time. With Silk Road's success, countless imitators emerged: Evolution, AlphaBay, Hansa, Dream Market, Wall Street Market, and many more. But in this Wild West, where there was no customer service hotline, no credit card chargeback, and no police to call when things went wrong, fraud became inevitable. Part 2. The Anatomy of a Darknet Scam. How exactly did these scams work? On the Darknet, scams usually took one of three forms: exit scams. A marketplace builds trust over time, collects deposits and vendor fees, then suddenly shuts down, disappearing with all the Bitcoin locked inside. Victims had no recourse. The site simply went offline. Vendor scams individual sellers advertised fake goods, counterfeit cash, or services like hacking. They accepted Bitcoin but never delivered anything. Service scams, beyond products, there were hitman for hire, hacking for hire, and even money doubling schemes. Almost all were elaborate hoaxes designed to exploit desperate or greedy users. The unifying theme? Trust was an illusion. Part 3. Famous exit scams that shook the Darknet. Let's look at some of the most infamous cases. 1. Sheep Marketplace, 2013. Sheep Marketplace was one of the first major Silk Road replacements. It ran smoothly for months, convincing users it was a safe alternative. Then, in late 2013, it suddenly vanished. The admins claimed hackers stole 5,400 Bitcoin, worth about $6 million at the time. But blockchain analysis suggested the site's own operators had taken the coins. Today, that same Bitcoin haul would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. 2. Evolution, 2015. Evolution Market positioned itself as one of the most professional Darknet sites. It had a sleek interface, good uptime, and a reputation for stability. Then, in March 2015, its administrators disappeared overnight, taking with them over $12 million in Bitcoin from vendors and buyers. Users flooded forums with rage, but there was nothing they could do. The site's operators simply cashed out and vanished. This became known as the largest Darknet exit scam at the time. 3. Wall Street Market, 2019. By 2019, the Darknet had grown more sophisticated. Wall Street Market was among the biggest platforms, handling thousands of listings. Suddenly, users noticed something strange. Moderators were locking vendor accounts unless they paid a security fee. It was extortion. Shortly after, the admins attempted to pull off an exit scam worth $11 million in Bitcoin and Monero. But this time, law enforcement was already watching. Europol and the FBI coordinated a takedown, seizing servers and arresting the operators. The message was clear. Even in the Darknet, no one was untouchable. Part 4. Beyond markets. Service hoaxes markets weren't the only place fraud thrived. Some of the most outrageous scams came from service sites, especially hitman-for-hire hoaxes. The most notorious example was Besa Mafia, a so-called assassination marketplace. It promised professional killers for hire, payable in Bitcoin. Investigations revealed it was nothing more than a scam run by opportunists. Desperate people paid thousands, but no hits were ever carried out. The site was designed purely to steal Bitcoin and gather blackmail material. Other scams included money-doubling schemes, promising to multiply Bitcoin. Fake hacking services offering to break into emails or bank accounts. Ransomware kits that either didn't work or contained backdoors for the scammers themselves. The dark web became less about criminal enterprise and more about criminals scamming other criminals. Part 5. Why people fell for it. So why did people keep falling for these scams? The psychology of Darknet fraud reveals several key factors. Anonymity breeds overconfidence. Many users believed they were safe and untraceable, making them more willing to take risks. Greed and desperation. Whether it was drugs, money laundering, or hiring a hacker, users wanted shortcuts. Scammers exploited that. The illusion of professionalism. Marketplaces copied the design of legitimate e-commerce sites, creating a false sense of security. Fear of exposure. Victims often stayed silent, afraid to admit they were scammed while attempting to buy illegal goods. This silence allowed scammers to keep operating without much resistance. Part 6. Law enforcement strikes. Back despite the myth of anonymity, law enforcement agencies gradually developed tools to track activity. Silk Road Takedown 2013. Ross Ulbricht was arrested, and his laptop was seized with chat logs and Bitcoin wallets intact. AlphaBay and AMP Hansa 2017. The FBI and Europol coordinated one of the biggest Darknet stings. After shutting down AlphaBay, they secretly ran Hansa for weeks, collecting user data before shutting it down too. Blockchain analysis. Companies like Chainalysis emerged, using blockchain forensics to trace anonymous Bitcoin transactions. Suddenly, the Darknet wasn't as safe as users thought. Part 7. The scale of the damage, how much money was lost to Darknet fraud. Exact numbers are difficult, but researchers estimate hundreds of millions in Bitcoin were stolen through exit scams, vendor fraud, and hoaxes. And unlike traditional scams, victims rarely reported the crimes. Who would admit they lost money trying to buy drugs, weapons, or fake IDs? This silence allowed the cycle to repeat over and over again. Part 8. Were some of these scams government traps? Here's where things take a darker turn. Some researchers and Darknet veterans believe certain markets may have been honeypots, traps run by governments to gather data. For example, Hansa Market was secretly operated by Dutch police before its shutdown, collecting user data for weeks. Could other markets have been quietly monitored in the same way? It raises the question, were all scams truly the work of criminals? Or were some orchestrated to scare people away from the Darknet while feeding intelligence databases? We may never know. But in the world of secrecy and shadows, it's a possibility that can't be dismissed. Part 9. The bigger picture. The Darknet was supposed to represent freedom. Bitcoin was supposed to represent financial liberation. Instead, both became tools for fraudsters to exploit human weakness. The promise of anonymity led to overconfidence. The promise of fast money led to scams. The promise of untraceable wealth led to devastating losses. It's a cautionary tale. Technology alone can't replace trust. And in the Darknet, where trust is just another currency, it's always at risk of being stolen. Conclusion. The Darknet showed us a paradox. It was built on ideals of freedom and privacy, but it became a playground for scammers and fraudsters. Exit scams like Evolution and Sheep Marketplace wiped out millions. Service hoaxes like Besa Mafia preyed on desperation and greed. And countless victims were left with nothing but empty wallets and shame. In the end, the greatest scam wasn't just about money. It was about the illusion that anonymity equals safety. Because in the Darknet, the moment you let your guard down, your wealth can vanish into smoke. This has been our deep dive into Darknet fraud and crypto scams. Do you think some of these markets were really just scams, or were they carefully crafted traps set by governments to gather intelligence? The truth, like much of the Darknet, remains hidden in the shadows.